My name is Mark Cerny. I'm a freelance consultant in game design and technology to the games business. Well, the gaming industry has changed a lot in the last 30 years, certainly. I mean, back 30 years ago when I started at Atari, coin-operated games were the center of the universe. But really about 6 months after I joined Atari, the bottom fell out of the market. And I want to say it wasn't my fault. There's nothing I did in my first 6 months that wiped out the business. But arcade games went into a steep decline, and next up was PC games. That was the big thing. I mean, if you look at it by the end of the 80s, PC games, certainly from a creative, from an artistic perspective, that was the center of the universe. It wasn't the GDC that got started 25 years ago. It was the CGDC, the Computer Game Developers Conference. And I remember going to early CGDC, and I had put together the team to do Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That was the top-selling title in games in the US that year. And they went to the CGDC, and consumer games were viewed so poorly as crass commercial BS that with the top game in the industry, when people asked me what I was doing, I had to tell them I was between jobs. Right, so in the 80s, the US had this huge decline in the arcade business, and Japan, actually the opposite. The arcades continue to thrive and expand. And I believe it is economics. In the States, it was a quarter-based economy. A quarter isn't very much money to begin with. And on top of that, a lot of the arcades went to tokens and devalued it further. In Japan, there was enough of a industry collaboration to be able to go from, when I was living in Japan, they transitioned from 50 yen play to 100 yen play. So in those days, that was more like 40 cents to 80 cents a play. And pretty much, you go to an arcade, it would be 100 yen, and the players just got used to it. And that made the arcade business healthy in Japan to a degree it never was in the States. I think it's really tricky for arcades to come back in the States, and the idea that you'd go to the mall and hang out spending your quarters, I think that that is just lost in the depths of time at this point. The business today is incredibly healthy. Now, having said that, I don't run a publisher, but as I look at it, yeah, okay, the consumer business is getting a bit soft, but in an industry which has had major crashes, right? You won't find many people that worked in the games business before 1983 because 90% of them lost their jobs in 1983 and had to go somewhere else. So for a business with that kind of background, if we look at these waves and transitions, yes, on a certain degree it is painful, but on another level, the industry has never been more healthy. iPad, iPhone, socialization, and still PC, MMO, and the core console business all doing pretty well in my opinion. So a long time ago, I worked out that the perfect number of employees for me was 0. And I'm proud to say that I have achieved that goal. I used to be a manager. In fact, I used to be president of a boutique game publisher called Universal Interactive Studios. That was Universal Studios Game Division. And we were phenomenally successful. Little math on a piece of paper and you can work out, we probably made in a couple short years, with a tiny staff, $200 million of profit for Universal Studios. And I looked at this. I could have looked at this as a springboard to, great, I've done the boutique publisher, now I can head over to the business side and I can be, I can run a larger studio, or I can run a small publisher or something. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity to do something rather rare, to contribute simultaneously to multiple games at a pretty high level, because that's where the learning is. So a lot of people, it's very sad if you look at it today, there is a 5-year product life cycle. For 5 years, you're doing one thing. It's really hard to learn too much on that kind of pace. You ship your product, you don't ship your product. But I've been blessed in that I have been able to contribute to as many as 4 titles at once. And every title, we make different mistakes. And we learn different things. And to be able to do that, I don't know, it's just as Ray and Greg were saying at the keynote 2 days ago, it's a force multiplier. If you're learning that much, it's got to be good somewhere. I mean, this really is the social era. I think 20 years from now, a 35-year-old is going to be nothing like a 35-year-old today, because they will have grown up with whatever the successors to Facebook and Twitter and the like are. And this is changing the world. Forget about games for a minute. We have the people's revolution going on in Egypt, and it's fueled by social media. So regardless of what happens here, I think it's going to be pretty darn interesting years for all of us.